The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Yes, that is sunshine outside our windows here on Jennifer Street in beautiful Northwest Washington, D.C. How long it's going to last? I don't know, but man, it's been a while since we've seen the sun. Did I watch True Detective, the latest season? I've seen all of them. This one was Jodie Foster's season, and it was a little different than the others. That was pretty good, but it was based in Alaska during that period of the year where you don't see the sun for like a full week, and it really added to the whole way that show unfolded, all the episodes. I think there were 6 of them. Not that we're near that, but just, here's Thursday, and it doesn't seem like we've seen the sun since the weekend, and it's back today. So there's your weather update. This is apropos of nothing, as the saying goes, but I was in the newsroom. You're getting ready for the show. We have a bank of televisions there, like most newsrooms, where they put all the various channels up so people can glance up, see what's happening, and we have TiVo, so if something is said, we can rewind and record it, that sort of thing. I work alongside John Matthews, who's the news director at WMAL in the morning, getting ready to do my show, and he does his newscasts on WMAL. Anyway, on one of the televisions, they had Fox News up, and I think it was an election analyst. I'm not sure who the individual was, but it was one of those shots where you stand up in front of a board, so you get a full-length view, unlike like a news set where the anchor sits behind a desk and really doesn't matter what he or she has on their legs because you don't see it, and often trade secret. You'll have a sports guy especially put on a coat and a tie and a pair of shorts in the summer. It's not that big a thing. You see that sometimes on PTI. They're not in the studio that much anymore, but Wilbon sometimes wears shorts when he does the show, and when they do what they call a wide bump shot, you'll see the shorts. Anyway, this person, who I think was an election analyst, was standing up at the board, and he was wearing a beautiful gray chalk stripe suit, really nice suit. But on his feet, he was wearing basketball shoes. I know this is stylistic now. I know this is what people wear. And if you know me, you're thinking to yourself, boy, you dress like you're homeless. What right do you have to criticize anybody's wardrobe? I don't. It's just that it seems strange to me that someone would wear a nice suit like that and not put on a pair of shoes, dress shoes. I know it's more comfortable to wear sneakers, but when did this become a thing? My father-in-law passed away about 15 years ago. He made his living selling men's clothes. I wonder what his reaction would be to this. I don't think he would look upon this positively. I don't think he sold shoes in the store. He may have. But, the look that you try to create when you go into a store like that, a haberdasher, it doesn't seem like it should include sneakers. But I guess this is totally acceptable now. Still looks crazy to me. You know what it looks like? It looks like you went to the gym in the morning and you took all your work clothes with you, but you forgot your shoes. And oh, God, I can't go home and go get my shoes because I'm close to work and I got to be in the office at X time. So I got to do this. I'll just wear my sneakers with my suit. And 20 years ago, you'd have been laughed at when you came in the office. What? Look at you. Whoa, sneakers with your dress clothes. What are you thinking there? Now it's like, it's supposed to be stylish. Okay, all right. Live and learn, as they say. Haven't done some football in a while. Been talking mostly about the tournament. And this year, as I mentioned, I can't remember a year, well, it hasn't been a year, where you spend as much time talking about the women as you do about the men. But because of the Caitlin Clark effect, that's the case. And I am as much looking forward to the women's Final Four on Friday as I am the men's on Saturday. I'm trying to figure out a way so I can stay up and watch this Iowa UConn game, which is due to tip at 9:30. So the way it works is it's got to be 25 minutes after the end of the previous game. And if the first game goes long, there's overtime, something like that, then, the 9:25 tip-off or the 9:30 tip-off becomes maybe 9:45, maybe 10 o'clock, and it's going to be after midnight. So the hope is, at least for me, that South Carolina and NC State go short. And, South Carolina may win the whole thing. They're the undefeated team and totally flying under the radar because they don't have the identifiable star that Iowa has in Caitlin Clark and UConn has in Paige Beckers. And this is how the NBA was built. It was built on the backs of stars, and the momentum of the still highest-rated final ever between Magic and Bird in 1979 carried over into the NBA. David Stern was smart enough to jump on that and say, hey, we're going to build around these stars. And the league really took off during that period of time in the early 80s and into the 90s. And with women's basketball, it's become more popular, not more popular, but as popular, seemingly, as men's basketball this year because of those stars, those transcendent stars, especially Caitlin Clark. So we'll get back to that. We'll get back to the college basketball. Charles Barkley was on yesterday with the Dan Patrick Show, and that's what they talked about. Barkley stepping away from the NBA to do the Final Four, and a preview of that coming up. But some football stuff, and if you don't know, the Commanders have started their offseason workouts. So this is really the first interaction that the players are getting with Dan Quinn, the new coach. And as I expected, the feedback has been positive. Not that anyone would publicly criticize, but the reputation that Dan Quinn had was that he was really good with players, a real players guy, really, somebody that this organization needed. Not that Ron Rivera was necessarily adversarial with the players, but, somebody who can go along with what is a total whitewash of the program and get things back on track. And, of course, all the free agents that they've signed, I think it's 20 new players have all been brought in by the new administration. And Adam Peters really has been busy in the last few weeks. And so at these OTAs, these off-season workouts, which started on Tuesday, Sam Cosmi said, quote, "It's like you went to a new team. It's definitely a breath of fresh air." Now, that's understandable off a team that won only 4 games, but it also tells you, there aren't really too many guys who've left here that I'm really sad about them going. You know what I mean? Like, it's, okay, we got a new team here, and we needed a new team because the old team was really terrible. And this from Liam Griffith's story in the Washington Times today. Players said Quinn has brought a new energy to the facility that was palpable from the first meeting. The new coach had players switch seats on Tuesday so they could shake hands and introduce themselves to their new teammates, breaking down the barriers that could otherwise divide holdovers from new additions. This kind of reminds me of when Chuck Noll took over the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1969. They were a terrible team. They had won 1 game the year before. And he got up in front of the team and he said, look, I'm sure many of you are fine individuals and will go on to great lives, but I'm going to be getting rid of most of you because you're all either too small, too slow, not strong enough, whatever, but the talent level here is too low. We got to increase it. And as it turned out, there were very few guys from that first team that stayed on and built that dynasty of the 1970s. A lot of it, most of it, was what he built through the draft. Great draft picks like Mean Joe Green and Terry Bradshaw, and even getting guys lower down in the draft like John Stallworth and all the Lynn Swan, all the great players that they had. They built that team through the draft, and this team is going to be built through the draft, which is coming up later this month. But also, it's going to be built through players who are free agents who can fill gaps from what was obviously a terrible roster from last year, at least in the eyes of the coach and the GM, because they have really changed them, like a third of the roster, right? Third of the roster already, and that's going to change even more when we get to the draft. And before I forget about the draft, I talked to Mel Kiper yesterday. Really excited. He's going to be on Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Tuesday at 10 o'clock, we'll do our annual visit with Mel. And we just talked briefly about Jaden Daniels, and in his mind, there's no question Daniels is going to be number 2. It's not going to be Drake May, and it's not Mel looking at the tape. It's not Mel looking at the numbers. It's not Mel, just talking to one person. It's Mel talking to a lot of people. And he has built up a long list of contacts in his 40 years of doing the draft on ESPN. So what he is telling you is what he has learned is it's fairly certain. Things could change, but it's fairly certain that Jaden Daniels will go number 2 to Washington. Also yesterday, we had a trade, and not that this was a total shock because this is what happens with Stefon Diggs. Eventually, the clock runs out, and he's not happy and has to go. But, man, Buffalo has really put itself in a very, very tough position because they've now lost their top receivers. They now have had to trade Stefon Diggs, and I say had to because look at what they got in return. Nothing. Basically nothing. They sent him to Houston. They got the Texans' second-round pick next year, which Houston had lying around anyway because they had gotten that in a trade with Minnesota. And Houston also got Buffalo's 6th-round pick this year and a 5th-rounder in 2025. So Houston gets one of the top receivers in the game, still in his prime at 30 years old. They got a couple of low-round draft picks, and they have to give up a draft pick, which was an extra anyway because they had received it from Minnesota. Man, that is a great, great deal for Houston and not a good deal for the Buffalo Bills. Tony Kornheiser and Pablo Torre, who was in for Wilbon yesterday on PTI, talked about the deal.
It had been going around for some time that Diggs wanted to get out of Buffalo. His defensive back brother Trayvon wrote on social media that Steph should get out of there. Pablo, how do you see this impacting the resident quarterbacks, Josh Allen and C.J. Stroud?
I want to start with C.J. Stroud, Tony, because C.J. Stroud, for people who fell asleep last season, had not just the greatest rookie season we've ever seen from a quarterback. He led the NFL in passing yards and touchdown to interception percentage. So this guy, now having Tank Dell, Nico Harrison, and suddenly Stefon Diggs, Dalton Schultz, by the way, Joe Mixon at running back, give me an offense that's more dangerous than the Houston Texans. So I just marvel at how the Texans were a laughingstock. Suddenly they've rebuilt themselves into an actual contender because of the offense that they have. But the Josh Allen thing, I want to throw it to you, because the Josh Allen thing, it just feels like the Bills are trying to do what Patrick Mahomes got away with, right? You don't need your number one receiver because that's how good you are.
Right.
Plus, we don't want to pay him. But I would be terrified if I'm a Bills fan.
Yeah, and the illusion you're making is to Tyreek Hill, of course. And while we think Tyreek Hill is a great player, they have won Super Bowls without him, so it's hard to necessarily make that case. If you listen to this network for any length of time, you will hear within a 1-hour period this same question. Do you think that the window that Josh Allen has to win the Super Bowl is closing? Well, if you trade away your number one receiver, it certainly is an opening. I mean, I don't know how. I'm trying to figure out how you do that. I understand that his productivity went down after they changed offensive coordinators in the middle of the season. But to give away him and draft picks and only get a second-round pick back, that's a little baffling to me. Wide receivers do not grow on trees. It's hard to get a free agent to Buffalo. So unless you tell me that Stefon Diggs walked in there and said, I'm not coming back here no matter what, then I'm going to question this particular trade. And it is terrible for Josh Allen. And you're right, it's great for C.J. Stroud. Look, they were the surprise of the league last year, but they were under no pressure last year. This year, Stroud and DeMeco Ryans will be under equal pressure at quarterback and coach to any quarterback and coach in the league, because this is the prove-it year. So this feels like an early Christmas present to get Diggs, unless, and this is my only caveat is this: he was not a happy guy in Minnesota. He probably wasn't happy, we think, in Buffalo. If he's not happy in Houston, he's a malcontent, that wouldn't be great. But if that's not true, it seems like they are a division winner for sure.
Yeah, and Tony, just remind me, right? The history of wide receivers you've seen, the characteristics you've described, this is kind of par for the course for a lot of star wideouts. Yeah. They do argue with their quarterbacks. Yeah. They do, in the modern era, reply on Twitter saying, look, I need to be a number one guy, and I'm not treated like a number one guy. They just put that on the internet instead of just in the locker room. Now, that's a difference. But to me, go back to the Texans for a second, because you're right about the Bills. I am horribly, horribly disappointed if I'm Josh Allen that this just happened to me. But the Texans have this thing going where they have a quarterback on a rookie contract, Tony. The most valuable asset in the NFL is a quarterback who's really, really good on a rookie contract. You can afford all of the things around him. And their window, the Texans' window, is bay windows. That's what they got. One of those nice big mansions. They can see the whole league through it. That's the situation they have in Houston.
Yeah, and that's the hope here, that Jaden Daniels is the next C.J. Stroud, and they can do things. They already have cap room here anyway, but if C.J. Stroud is the model for Jaden Daniels, and Daniels has a season like Stroud had last year, things could look up pretty fast. I mean, look, going into last year, Houston was expected to be one of the worst teams in the league, and they made the playoffs and won a playoff game. So you never know. As for Josh Allen, this has got to be devastating, because they've had this window there where they're supposed to be in contention for the Super Bowl every year, and they wind up running into a brick wall known as the Kansas City Chiefs. But at least if you have weapons, you can keep knocking on the door. It's really devastating. Here's what's left in Buffalo right now. They're going to probably make a trade and probably draft somebody, but the wide receivers that are left there, the top one may be Curtis Samuel, who they said goodbye to here in Washington. Khalil Shakir, Matt Collins, great guy, journeyman player from Wooten High School. My son played basketball with his older brother. Terrific athlete, but not a number one receiver. They don't really have much left. And on top of that, according to Brandon Beane, the general manager of the Bills, Josh Allen probably found out about the trade yesterday when he woke up. He's out on the West Coast, and he said he likely woke up to the deal and said he often speaks with Allen throughout the season. They knew that there was a possibility, or he called it a slight possibility, that they would part ways with Diggs. You got to think, if Josh Allen is saying, you got to do everything you can to keep this guy, because the second leading receiver, Gabe Davis, left for free agency with Jacksonville. So you don't have much left. As for Diggs did put out an Instagram post yesterday saying, "I can't begin to express the amount of love and respect I have for the city of Buffalo. For the best years of my life, the city welcomed me with open arms. I'm forever grateful for all of you, Buffalo Bills organization." That's the Twitter handle. Something special was built over these years with some special men that will always have a place in my heart. Bills Mafia, so many great memories created through the years. Those games were crazy because of you. Sadly, good things come to an end until we meet again. Well, they came to an end because of you, because you wanted out. They don't want you to go. This is not a sad situation that, nothing we could do about it. This is Jesus. What are you doing to us? We got you here so Josh Allen would have some weapons. And, maybe if things go right one of these years, you can beat Kansas City. Now, I don't know what that's going to be tough to replace. Part of the deal, again, this goes to quarterback contracts. When you sign Josh Allen to that kind of a deal, these are the things that you're up against. And, you cannot keep players like that. Now, they wanted to keep him, but in terms of signing high-priced free agents to replace him, you really can't do it. You're hamstrung to a great degree. Charles Barkley weighing in on college basketball and what he thinks of Caitlin Clark. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
I don't think you can overstate what a great job Mike Elias has done as general manager of the Orioles. He's been recognized as the Major League Executive of the Year for the team that he put together last year that won over 100 games. And they may not win 100 this year, but they're off to a pretty good start. They won again last night over the Royals, and they are now heading on the road to play Pittsburgh, their first road series of the year. They're 4-2 on the season. And, you look at the lineup that he has put together, it's young guys under team control for a long time. Okay, it's a no-brainer to take Adley Rutschman at the top of the draft when you have number one. Okay, anybody can do that. But he's also identified, guys like Gunnar Henderson, who was American League Rookie of the Year, and he's put together an excellent team that is young, homegrown talent, guys that have played together for a long, long time. Cowser, who was pinch hitting last night, had another hit. They're getting contributions all the time. And on top of that, it's what's behind these guys that's so encouraging. Now, I know it's only one game, but last night, the Norfolk Tides, which is their AAA team, they beat the Charlotte Knights 26-11. 26-11. Kyle Stowers had 3 home runs, 4 hits, 7 runs batted in for the Orioles. Jackson Holliday, who many thought would make the team coming out of spring training, they sent him down for a little more seasoning. He's only 20 years old, but he continues to hit. He had 4 hits last night. He's hitting .400 with 2 homers and 8 runs batted in, and the team is off to a 4-1 start. When I talked to Mike Elias last week, I asked about Jackson Holliday, and I said maybe the best-case scenario is everybody stays healthy and you don't need to bring him up. He says, no, I hope that he plays his way onto the roster. Well, if he keeps hitting like this, I know it's the first week, 2 weeks, whatever it is, but he hit .400, as the old saying goes, it's tough to keep you down on the farm. And Jackson Holliday may play his way on. So not just the young guys who are performing for the Orioles right now in the major leagues, but the guys behind him in the minors. And I remember this in the early days of free agency. I was working in San Antonio. We had the Double-A team for the Los Angeles Dodgers, and that's when that infield, stayed together forever. It was Steve Garvey at first base, Davey Lopes at second base, Bill Russell at shortstop, and Ron Say at third. And they played together for like 7 or 8 years, which would be unheard of now, the same infield. And there was a lot of talent behind them in the minor leagues that couldn't crack through because these were veteran guys who had long-term contracts and had performed. And, Dodgers won the World Series in 1981. They were in it in 77, 78. They were always around when contending time came. And they had a great organization. I mean, really first-class organization. Still is. But that was a problem. So the Orioles have a nice problem here. They not only have young talent on their team that won 101 games last year, but down on the farm in AAA, as we saw last night, they got some players who can really get it done. And it's going to be very exciting when Jackson Holliday comes up. The plan would be, as I talked to Mike Elias last week, they want to have Holliday play second base, and they want to eventually have Gunnar Henderson settle in at shortstop. He's splitting time between third and short. What did he play last night? Henderson played short last night. But he has played some games at third base, and I think they would like to settle him in at shortstop, become the modern Cal Ripken, and Jackson Holliday would take over at second base. All right, some college basketball. Charles Barkley, always fun. On the Dan Patrick Show yesterday, Alabama in the Final Four playing Connecticut Saturday. Patrick set him up with, so, Charles, Mr. Auburn, are you rooting for Alabama?
Being an Auburn guy, can you root for Alabama?
Hell no.
Okay.
Under no circumstances can I root for them. Hey, give them credit. Give them credit. Coach Oat and the Sears young kid and Pringle, they've done a fabulous job. The young kid Nelson, shocked me in the game. Man, he got some handle and everything. But under no circumstances could I root for Alabama.
Yeah, all right, Charles, holding things up for Auburn, which, by the way, if you don't know or you don't remember, went out in the first round to Yale. They're a good team, but they were upset. They were one of the early March Madness upsets this year, and a lot of people had them in the Final Four. And they got a very good coach, but they did not get it done this year. Discussion about DJ Burns, who we're going to see go against Zach Edey. I think that's the second game. Is that the second game on Saturday? Let me look. I think it is. Final Four Saturday. No, it's going to be the first game. So Purdue and NC State, 6 o'clock, and then UConn and Alabama in the second game. And everybody's now become interested in DJ Burns, who's quite a curiosity. He's 6'9", listed at 275. I bet he's north of 300. And, he's great college player, especially in this tournament. The question is, can he play in the NBA? Chris Canty, who's part of our morning show on Sportsmanlike on ESPN 630 and played in the NFL, won a Super Bowl with the Ravens, defensive lineman, he said he thinks that Burns projects beautifully in the NFL because of his footwork to be an offensive tackle. He said he could be a $20 million a year offensive tackle. I think what people discount about Burns is that if you're going to play football, especially in the NFL, there have been a few guys who have done this. They've made the transition from basketball to football. And Antonio Gates was a college basketball player who became, if he's not in the Hall of Fame, is getting consideration for the Hall of Fame for his 15-year career as a tight end with the Chargers. Became a great player. People have done this before. But the one thing that I think you discount, especially if you haven't played football at a high level, is the hitting that takes place. And you have to be willing to take that on. And you know, that's what drives a lot of great athletes away from football. They don't like to hit. You got to like the contact. You got to embrace that. And not everybody does that. And when Burns has been talked about it, he's saying, well, I want to exhaust my other options, probably meaning Europe. George Mason had a player, I can't remember his name, but he played on the Final Four team. And he was same kind of thing. I think he was even a little smaller than Burns. He might have been like 6'6", but he was a big guy underneath and could block out and get rebounds and things like that. And he got a tryout with the Giants, but he left. And I think he understood, this is a level of contact that I'm not prepared for. So just because a guy looks like an offensive tackle and he may have footwork like an offensive tackle, in his heart, he may not be an offensive tackle because he doesn't like the contact. But as for his NBA prospects, and Charles Barkley had a similar body type, though he got himself in much better shape when he got to the NBA. This was Dan Patrick talking to Barkley about what he projects for Burns as a possible NBA player.
I've been asked that same question about Zach Edey for the last 3 months. And I love both of those kids. So I think it's going to be interesting. I can't wait to see it. But I've been asked, they just started asking me about DJ Burns in the last 2 weeks. But I've been asked by coaches in the NBA and general managers about Zach Edey, because I have a lot of private conversation with managers, general managers and coaches when I'm studying all this tape. I tell you what, that damn boy at Tennessee, Dalton Connect, woo! I said, yo, man, y'all better start watching this kid. He put on a show last Saturday, and so did Zach Edey. But like I say, I don't want to answer the question about Edey and Burns because let's let it play out.
Well, I just wonder about that body type. You know, he's like a Zach Randolph. He's not explosive.
Yeah.
Kind of built like Zion, but he's not like Zion. But he's great footwork. He said that he studied Akeem Olajuwon, his footwork, and really good passer, and knows how to use his body. And
but then you know how they lie about all these college kids. He doesn't look 6'9" to me.
No, he's 6'7".
Yeah. So it's gonna be. We're gonna have to wait and see. To be honest with you, it's a great story. He seems like a great kid, but I can't really until I see what how big he is. I can't really give you an honest opinion.
Well, it's like you did things that were amazing. They wanted to make you a little taller because somebody your size shouldn't have been doing what you were doing. And I remember standing next to you the first time. I went, that dude ain't 6'6". That dude ain't 6'5". You were probably 6'4.5".
Yeah, but if you're going to play at a smaller height, you got to be really explosive, like myself, or Larry Johnson, Zion. I'm trying to think, is there anybody I'm missing? But you have to be really, really explosive. You can't play a 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", in my opinion, unless you're really explosive.
Yeah, it's tricky. But, if I would have said, look at Joker and 5 years down the road, he'll be the best player in the game, and you probably would have said there's no way. Giannis,
yeah, but he's different. Yeah, but he's different, though, Dan, because, number one, he's 7 feet tall. He got feet just like Burns, but he's 7 feet tall. He's a great shooter. He's a great passer. You have to factor all that stuff in. Now, if Burns was 6'10", 6'11", yeah, he could play in the NBA. But you have to factor in our Jokers. Like Jokers, he can shoot the three. He can post up. He's got great feet. He got the whole package. But actually, that's a perfect example. We get so enamored by some of these guys who got they can run and jump. They don't have any idea how to play basketball. I always say, yeah, he can run and jump, so can a deer, but I would never put a deer in the game.
All right, last thing for Barkley, and everybody has an opinion on this these days, is the great Caitlin Clark in Iowa. This is the Barkley take on what has, I think Gino Auriemma said it, and he's got as much credibility as anybody. He says that's the best women's player ever. Forget it. The ballots have been counted. Caitlin Clark is the best women's player in history. This is Barkley on what he's seen from her.
Caitlin is a once-in-a-lifetime attraction, and she's going to go on and bring a lot of eyeballs to the WNBA. But she's a bright light, man. You know, I tried to get to. I want to see her play in person this year, but I couldn't get to Iowa because it's in the middle of nowhere. I was trying to work it in my schedule. You know, I fly every week between New York.
Don't you have a private jet?
Hell no.
You don't have access to a private jet?
You know how expensive those things are?
Yeah.
Every time one of those bad boys takes off, it's like $25,000 one way. That's crazy. I've done it before.
You've got that money.
Yeah, but I want to keep it. I don't want to be broke again. Yeah.
Were you broke?
Oh, growing up, I was broke.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, it's been a long. Well, in fairness, I was broke after 4 years in the NBA because my first agent stole all my money. I don't want to mention his name. His name was Lance Lusnick. He stole all my damn money. And let me tell you something, Dan. If I ever see him again, I'm going to beat him to a pulp. If I ever see that dude again, I'm going to beat him to a pulp. Because he's never apologized. Now, if he had apologized, it's probably 40 years ago. If he had about 38, 39, he never apologized for stealing all my money. And if I saw him today, I'd beat the hell out of him.
He got fined $5,000 for stealing your money.
You know, the only good thing about it, Dan, I wasn't making any money.
You know what? You should fire up the Barkley blimp and then take that to go see Caitlin Clark. You could have done that.
Well, that was very nice of Capital One to give me a blimp. I'm getting, you know, it's so funny. I'm getting texts from people saying it's over certain cities. So I guess it's got to get to Arizona. I don't get to Arizona till the end of the week because I'm in New York to do King Charles tonight.
Yeah.
So I'm not getting to Arizona till the weekend. So hopefully I'll get to see the blimp by the end of the week.
I was in Cleveland for the Final Four. That's not very far.
Yeah, but I got stuff to do.
Oh, okay.
I got the Final Four. I got King Charles.
Right.
I got the Final Four. But I want to see her play in person because what she's done for the women's game has been incredible, man.
Absolutely. And Pablo Torre, who's been sitting in for Wilbon last couple of nights on PTI, he was at the game that Caitlin Clark was able to. Caitlin Clark and teammates were eliminating LSU, the team they lost to in the final last year. And he said, you know, it's a different thing when you see the player in person. And in my mind's eye, I can still see Michael Jordan playing live. I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do that. I saw Julius Erving play live. I mean, those are things that stay with you, and there is a big difference between watching on television and seeing live. As for Angel Reese, she said she was going to delay her announcement whether or not she was going to go to the NBA until after the tournament, and she made her decision. And the way she announced it, I think, is a peek into what she is trying to do and what women's sports are trying to do. And the model is Serena Williams, who has done a lot with fashion. Now, she was the dominant player in women's tennis. She had some injuries, but probably for 15 years, maybe even close to 20 years. She's probably not going to be a factor anymore, but she kept herself in the public eye, not just for her tennis, but because of her fashion and other things that she did with her sister along those lines. And so in announcing that she was going to the WNBA, Angel Reese did a photo shoot for Vogue, and she wants to do some modeling. She wants to probably design her own clothes and that sort of thing. So she's going to be great for the WNBA too. And also I think that the hope is that she and Caitlin Clark will have sort of a bird magic thing going on, that when they face each other, that'll get a lot of eyeballs to the television. Like, hey, look at this. We saw how great it was when they played in college. Those two very important games, the national championship last year and then this year in the Elite Eight, once they get them both to the WNBA and again, this is perfect because their styles, their life, the way they present themselves, let's put it that way. It's almost like Bird and Magic. Here's this hardworking woman from Iowa, worked in the backyard basket, improving her game. And here's, another player in Angel Reese who's, she didn't grow up poor or anything. She grew up in Baltimore, started her career at Maryland, but tends to be more flamboyant. Let's put it that way. So, and Caitlin Clark didn't grow up on a farm, so it's not the Iowa farm girl against the big city girl from Baltimore, but it is a contrast. It's a contrast in styles, and it sets up perfectly, and I think this is very smart strategic work on her part and whoever represents her getting the announcement done in Vogue magazine yesterday. Tom Loverro lights up Ted Leonsis again. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Ooh, almost made a boo-boo. We're rolling along till 11 o'clock today. Mike Callow is sitting in for Tony Kornheiser. Tony, one of the great columnists the Washington Post ever had. Mike Wilbon as well. The tradition continues with people like Sally Jenkins and Barry Zerluga and others who, unfortunately, I'm leaving out, but those come to mind right away. And they're good at what they do. They're very, very good at what they do, but they don't always go the way that Tom Loverro does. And Tom isn't afraid to take a big whack at somebody, including Ted Leonsis. And he has called him in print for many years Transparent Ted because, Ted likes to tell you that he's letting you know what's going on behind the scenes on everything and so forth and so on. So you may have heard this yesterday. Ted was on Squawk Box on MSNBC or CNBC. I think it's CNBC. And he was talking about his record with women's sports and how good he is at it, and how good it's going to be, and how Washington is going to be the capital of women's sports across the country. This was Ted yesterday on CNBC.
Oh, it's certainly the growth stock right now, women's sports. I mean, we've been an advocate. We're one of the longest tenured WNBA owners. We own a piece of the WNBA by owning an NBA team, then by owning the WNBA team itself. And then we participated in the investment at the league level. So we really believe. But I want to go further. What I'd like to do is make Washington, D.C. the capital of women's professional sports. So I could see one day us replicating what we've done at Monumental. And we could have a women's hockey team. We could have women's baseball teams. We could have women's volleyball teams. I mean, I think that whole platform is getting ready to explode.
Well, I don't think he's necessarily wrong about that. I don't know how a women's professional baseball team would do or volleyball, but, if you kept it on a small enough level. And he's got his Monumental Network, which he just dumped a lot of money into, so that could create programming for that. That may be the most important thing of all, rather than attendance, just programming for television. If you get any kind of ratings, then you could probably make money off of that. That's the NFL now. The NFL is a television show. The ticket revenue, parking revenue, that's really, it's not inconsequential, but it's very, very much secondary to the TV money. So maybe there's that. But Tom takes a look at what the Caps and the Wizards have done in the last week. Not long after the big deal was announced that the teams were going to stay and the city's kicking in $515 million and everybody's happy. The Capitals, as Tom points out, held Pride Night, and the team gave away Pride-branded beanies with a special ticket offer, held an auction of autographed player-used sticks wrapped in rainbow-colored Pride tape, and posted LGBTQ messages in its in-game content. On Friday, the Wizards held their Pride Night, which included a pregame block party hosted by a local grocery store chain with a special happy hour with Pride koozies and souvenir cups given out to the first 100 fans. Throughout the game, LED signage and logos are displayed. pride flag-themed colors. The Monumental Sports and Entertainment Foundation announced it would donate $10,000 to supporting and mentoring youth advocates and leaders, a nonprofit organization that supports and empowers LGBTQ youth in the region. Meantime, here is how Pride Night is celebrated in Qatar, Monumental's business partner. Any public display of LGBTQ support would likely result in arrest and hard jail time that would include interrogations to reveal to the police anything you may not know about other LGBTQ people in hiding in the Islamic country. Qatar is the new investor Monumental welcomed with open arms last year, while counting the $200 million the country's anti-LGBTQ government pumped into Transparent Ted's coffers. Leonsis called such investments smart business. Okay, there's that. So, Tom asked Monumental for a response on that. You know, given the record of Qatar with people from LGBTQ, you know how they're handled. Some of them are put in jail. In Qatar, he says the hate crimes appear to be committed by the government against people of that, and he wanted to know, you know, how Monumental would respond. And so this is what he got from a Monumental spokesperson. Monumental Sports and Entertainment and our entire community of brands fully support the rights of LGBTQA+ community and are committed to helping catalyze greater inclusivity and acceptance across all sports now and into the future. Our individual teams activate theme nights and host fundraisers for LGBTQA+ community causes and foster a spirit of inclusion throughout their respective seasons. In addition, among MSE's, Monumental Sports, employee resources groups, is the Unity Group, which is focused on promoting an environment where MSE's LGBTQIA+ staff and allies are engaged, empowered, and optimizing the work, vision, and mission. The investment from Qatar has no impact on day-to-day operations, management, or culture of MSE or any of our sports teams and brands. Like all of MSE's minority investors, QIA has no ability to direct, control, or influence MSE or any of its operations. So that was their response to Tom asking about this. Leonsis and Monumental Sports, he writes, however, do have the ability to direct, control, or influence whose money they take. And what he says is they don't have the ability to feel shame. Okay, yeah, they got a minority investment from Qatar, and it's $200 million. And in the grand scheme of things, the value of his organization, that's not controlling interest. But the point being is, you know, you're taking on something that is in direct conflict, the way they do their business. It's in direct conflict into the way you're trying to do yours, with embracing LGBTQ people, and as you just heard in his, you know, puffed out chest statement on CNBC, how supportive he is of women and women's sports. Well, they're looked as second-class citizens in Qatar as well. So, you know, whatever you're doing here, Ted, yeah, they're not telling you how to do your business, but you're taking their money. You are, and the statement that Monumental put out doesn't really change the perception, really. I mean, they're not calling up Ted and saying, hey, you know, stop these nights because this is not how we operate. But they're also contributing money to Ted. And you know, the reality is, with what we've seen in golf, that this is the way it's going to be happening in sports going forward, and it probably isn't long before it happens in the NFL. Where they're already bumping their head against, you know, what they're able to raise. The Commanders being sold for $6 billion. There's a lot of things that they had to do to make that happen, including quite a few investors. The next team that sells, you know, does it sell for $10 billion? And who outside of Jeff Bezos has that kind of money to buy a team? So that could be impactful down the road. But Ted's 100%. Ted's 100% right. Tom's 100% right. The perception here is bad. You're the one who's embracing this culture, which is spit upon in Qatar, and you're taking Qatar's money. Found this interesting. Mentioned it yesterday that the Missouri voters had voted down a tax which would have rehabbed Arrowhead Stadium and helped to build a new stadium for the Kansas City Royals. Eric Johnson is the mayor of Dallas, and he jumped on this right away. And he put out a tweet which said, "Welcome home, Dallas Texans." And that is in reference to the Kansas City Chiefs, who left Dallas in 1962 to become the Kansas City Chiefs. If you don't know the background on this, Lamar Hunt was a billionaire, the Hunt family in Dallas, and he wanted to have an NFL team there. And the NFL wasn't interested in that happening. So he and others helped to start the AFL, and he announced that they were going to have the Dallas Texans as an entry. Well, that made the NFL nervous, and they quickly scrambled, and they got things together so that they could have the Dallas Cowboys. And they launched the same year. The AFL's first year was 1960, and the Dallas Cowboys' first year was 1960. Well, obviously, there's going to be much more interest in the NFL just for the teams that are coming into play. And over the course of those 3 seasons that they went head-to-head, it just wasn't profitable, wasn't working out for Lamar Hunt. So he moved his team to Kansas City. They became the Chiefs, and the rest is history. But it has been suggested in recent years that Dallas could conceivably support a second NFL team. And it has been usually thought of in terms of expansion, that if the league expands again, if they go to 34 teams instead of 32, that Dallas might get a second team. They have 2 teams in L.A., and they fill the stadium, especially for the Chargers with other teams' fans. Same thing for the Rams. They draw a lot of other teams' fans as well. But that's a city that didn't have a team for years. Now they have 2. Dallas, football-crazed area. I think they could easily support 2, and they could even share the stadium. Now, Jerry Jones may not want that to happen, and Jerry Jones may not want a Super Bowl champion playing in his backyard, but that's not as far-fetched as that may sound. That may be just the mayor tweaking Kansas City on that, but, this has been discussed. I've heard talk about this for the last couple of years, that the NFL is such a great television product that you could plop it down almost anywhere and draw people in, and more importantly, get television. And the television market, Dallas, which is 6, 7, it's bigger than here. I think we're 7, maybe it's 5. It's not that far behind the big 3, which are New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. And so getting an extra team there would be interesting. Chicago is also being mentioned as a possibility. They have 2 baseball teams. They support 2 baseball teams. Why wouldn't they support 2 football teams? It could happen. One in the AFC, one in the NFC, and you don't even have to do any finagling here. Kansas City comes over from the AFC. They're in Dallas, and you could conceivably have, you could have that in L.A. now. You could have that in New York, but you could conceivably have an all-Dallas Super Bowl. That could happen. And so while it seems like a joke, hey, bring back the Dallas Texans, 62 years after they left, not as crazy as you might think. And I would not be surprised in some of the bigger cities that don't have 2 teams that there could be 2. And Dallas would certainly be a very, very much of a prime spot for a second NFL team. I think that area could easily support both, and might force, well, who knows how long this would take. Jerry's in his 80s now, but it might force Jerry to do business a little bit differently, or it could be good for both teams, helpful. I think having the Nationals here has been helpful for baseball in this area with both the Orioles and the Nats. The late Peter Angelos disagreed, but I think that's the case. Coming up, Matt Painter talks on PTI about his team heading into the Final Four. And Adam Sandler is about to put out Happy Gilmore 2. Little preview of that on the Dan Patrick Show. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630. Oh, you got some sleepy Connecticut basketball players today. They have arrived in Phoenix, but they didn't get there until about 3 o'clock in the morning, Phoenix time. They took off from Bradley International Airport near Hartford, Connecticut, about 1:30 in the morning. They were scheduled to leave at 6, and because of mechanical problems, they had to look around for another plane. Took them a long time to do that, and they finally got in Phoenix 3:15 local time, which would be 6:15 our time. and there are certain media obligations and practice schedules and things like that that had to be all moved around. The NCAA put out a statement that they had worked with UCONN and charter airlines to develop several alternatives. Not a very good one, it seems. Took them all that time to find another plane, and said, quote, "We are very disappointed that UCONN will arrive later than anticipated. It's unfortunate the team's travel experience has been impacted." Nothing you could really do about it, but, it's. I wonder about this, too. Maybe it would make more sense to treat it like the Super Bowl, although I guess it's a distraction, and you have to make it seem like they're actually missing class. So you don't have them fly in until Wednesday when the games take place on Saturday. But they're college kids; they'll figure it out. They'll get enough rest between now and tip-off on Saturday night. But, yeah, Friday's the big day. Friday they have the open practices. Those are a lot of fun. The media sessions, all that stuff that goes along with it. And I just love the Saturday. The Saturday is just great at the Final Four. I liked it better when the first game would start at like 3 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock, but the television is huge now, and that's what they want. They want the TV numbers, so they're putting UConn on late. I think there's a little bit more curiosity in the big man matchup of Zach Edey and DJ Burns in the earlier game, Purdue and NC State, but they did not put that in the more prime time spot. UConn being defending champion, maybe that has a lot to do with it. Alabama really doesn't have the star power. You're talking about UConn, team that's the number one seed. Purdue with Edey, the great story, number one seed last year, lost to Fairleigh Dickinson, trying to do what Virginia did about 5 years ago when they got knocked out in the first round by UMBC, the first number one to lose to a 16, came back and won it all. And the NC State, the Cinderella story with the very amusing DJ Burns, everybody having a good time with him. Matt Painter is the coach of Purdue, and they have made the Final Four for the first time in 44 years. He played a long time, played 4 years under Gene Cady, who coached 25 years at Purdue and never made the Final Four. So it's not quite what happened with Gary and Lefty, because Gary didn't play for Lefty, but Gene Cady in many ways built Purdue basketball. And because Lee Rose was the coach when they went to the Final Four, and he left shortly after that. Gene Cady was the face of this team for 25 years, and as college basketball really became more and more popular on television thanks to ESPN, he became a very important figure in the game, but never made the Final Four in the same way that Lefty did not make it in his time. And then Gary came in and made 2 Final Fours and won the national championship, and maybe this is the year that Painter gets it done. But he showed up yesterday on PTI with Mike Wilbon off and Pablo Torre sitting in. Matt Painter, the coach of Purdue, talking to Tony and Pablo.
A week or so ago, you said that people who think that Zach Edey only succeeds because he's tall are basically morons and shouldn't be allowed to cover sports. And you said they should take a test. I love that. I agreed with every word of that. So I'll ask you, what do you see in the player Zach Edey, who you have built your team around?
Right. Obviously he's been very consistent, very competitive. He has elite size, but the fact that he's in his 7th year of organized basketball, he didn't play as a freshman in high school. It's a great story, but he's just kind of developing. Even though he's going to be a 2-time National Player of the Year, he's getting better from year to year. But he gets a lot of attention, and he gets fouled a lot. And his ability to kind of take everything in and then still be a productive player, but also be an unselfish player, has been key for us.
So his next test, Coach, is about to be DJ Burns, and of course NC State. So what are you telling Zach about this assignment that he has coming up? What are you telling him about DJ Burns?
Yeah, DJ Burns is a great player. He causes a lot of problems just because of his size, his ability to score, his ability to pass. He's very similar to a player we had at Purdue a couple years ago, Travion Williams. That was an all-league conference player at Purdue. And but you just can't give him angles. Like when he gets angles, he makes you pay. But it's also hard it's no different than Zach. Like, you don't have a lot of people out there like DJ Burns to be able to have a reference point. And there's nobody in college basketball like Zach to have a reference point for him.
Right. Your reference point growing up, your favorite team, it sounds like, based on our research here, actually happened to be the Indiana Hoosiers. You were a Bobby Knight guy. You were a fan, of course. You go to Purdue. You play for Coach Gene Cady, a legend in his own right. But I just want to get a sense of, like, need to be to actually wind up at Purdue in the first place.
Well, Bobby Knight was pretty smart. He didn't offer me a scholarship, so that made it real simple right there. He tried to get me to go to prep school, and he obviously had a good eye for things. I wasn't that good of a college player, but he wanted me to go to prep school for a year and then go to Indiana. But it was the right move, and I probably chose Gene Cady before I chose Purdue. He was very straightforward. He was very honest. And then when I got there, I didn't play my first year, but I just loved him. I loved watching him on the sideline. Seemed like he got a technical every game. In non-conference that first year. And I just loved his enthusiasm and how competitive he was.
So we'll get you out of here on this, and it'll be about Gene Cady. They showed Gene Cady in the stands at the regionals all the time. Even when a guy missed a foul shot and he went follow through, and you could see that he was saying that. He's up there. You get into the Final Four. He never made a Final Four. He's got tears in his eyes. Obviously, this is a guy you love. What does all of that mean to you?
Man, that means everything to us. He's our guy, man. He's the blueprint of this program. I've been very grateful to be able to follow him. A lot of these coaches that get opportunities, they're following 4 coaches in 20 years. I followed one guy who's been there for 25 years, and he just knew how to run a program. And he was so honest, but yet he was so tough during games, and we just loved playing for him. So for us to be able to get this done, and he's with us and he's a part of it, that just makes it special.
That's Matt Painter. And how about that? I mean, 25 years, and then he's replaced by one of his former players, and he's on a 19-year run now. And by making the Final Four this year, even if they go out, even if they're upset by NC State, he's gotten job security. And the other thing you said that you should take note of is about Zach Edey. I'm not saying that Zach Edey is going to become a great NBA player, but historically, big men take a long time to develop. It just works out that way. And the fact that Zach Edey has only been playing basketball for 7 years is pretty remarkable, especially the way players come up now. They start identifying kids when they're like 8, 9 years old. I mean, it changes, and I saw this, with my son playing basketball growing up. You see him play against these kids and go, wow, that kid's great. He's going to be in the NBA, and you find out he didn't make his high school team. But reality is he's a guy who's probably going to take a long time, and may, even if he gets to the NBA, and I think he's got a chance to stick for a while, even if he doesn't play a lot, he may get better and better. And, by the time he's in his 4th or 5th year, may develop into a pretty good player. I mean, it's not necessarily boom or bust for him going to the league. He'll probably be a first-round pick, maybe even a second-round pick, but has a chance to develop. And if he's gone this far in 7 years, because he is better this year than he was last year, quickness is a problem, but you can get quicker. And he is an excellent rebounder, an excellent passer, and he's a half-decent free throw shooter. If he can improve that a little bit, that might help as well. So I think that's important to recognize about Zach Edey. And as a college player, he's a force, 2-time player of the year. And I think that most people, as fans, would like to see the big man matchup, and that would happen if the 2 number 1 seeds win. If UConn wins late Saturday against Alabama, that sets up on Monday night if Purdue knocks off NC State. Zach Edey against Donavan Clingan, who most people have not been familiar with throughout the season, but was part of Connecticut's national championship team last year, has gotten better. And in that Illinois game, I mean, it was like men against boys. He was unstoppable. They had absolutely no answer for him. Big part of that 30-0 run that they had. And now they are back as defending champs, though they arrived in Phoenix late. They didn't get there till early this morning. But this is Clingan yesterday when he was on our show, our morning show on Sportsmanlike, and asked about being defending champions and being hungry enough to repeat.
Yeah, it's a hungry program that's, trying to do special things. Coach Hurley really,
instills that hunger in us in practice. We practice really hard every single day, even, on our best wins. We practice like we lose. And he just makes us hungry. If you want to be great, if you want to go on and, have a special career, you got to win. You got to win a lot, and, you can't be satisfied with, where have you gotten to, and, you just have to keep, your eye on the prize and just keep pushing for more, keep pushing to, want to win more. And, with this new team, with only a couple returners from last year, we want to do it for the young guys. We want to do it for the transfers, and, we want them to experience winning like we were able to last year.
One of the things that Danny Hurley said is his team is bulletproof. I mean, Hurley's not afraid. Hurley's not one of these Lou Holtz guys who's always poor-mouthing his team. He says, yeah, we work harder than everybody else. We're prepared for this. And he used the term bulletproof. So Clingan was asked, well, what about that? Are you, in fact, a bulletproof team?
How we practice and, our motivation and our energy going into games, it's really just what keeps us bulletproof is our defense. If we play our best defensive performances and, we, give everything we got on the defensive end, it could turn out to be good for us. Coach always says what keeps us bulletproof is our defense. So, really everyone in this locker room just knows that, if we pick up on the defensive end and we do what we got to do on defense, the offense will come to us. We'll find good shots. We'll break teams down and, we'll wear them out and get them tired, especially in that second half. This team, like I said, we're hungry. We just want to win. We don't care about, personal stats. As long as UConn gets the win, we're all happy.
And they are the favorite to win it all again. The last thing is the number that he wears. You may have heard this story, but he wears number 32, and there's significance to that, as he explained on our morning show on Sportsmanlike.
She was a Division I player at the University of Maine. She passed away to cancer my 8th grade year of middle school, and she just influenced me to, want to do something to be great. I want to do something to make her proud, do something that, I knew she'd be smiling down on me. And, once she passed away, I really just took basketball so much more seriously. And, I just really put the work into, try to make it to the level I'm at now. And I'm going to keep working to, keep going. I used to wear number 23, through elementary school, through middle school. And, when she passed, I was like, this is a way to honor her, a way to represent her on the floor at all times. And, I wore 32 and just been wearing it ever since then.
That's, again, to honor his mom. His mom was a great player at Maine, wore number 32, so he now wears 32 and is terrific, has played incredibly well in this tournament. And I think most of us would like to see that big man matchup come Monday night with Zach Edey perhaps facing off against Donavan Clingan. He's got a cool name, too. It's kind of like, sounds like Mork's cousin from Mork and Mindy. I mentioned the Warren Sapp story yesterday. I don't know if you remember, if you're listening, talking about it. He, a Hall of Fame player, and it's basically blown up his TV career with a couple of arrests on domestic violence. He never served any jail time or anything like that. I thought it was a bad look, not this past year, but the year before, when they brought him into training camp with the big swirl about Dan Snyder and the sexual harassment. I didn't think that was a smart move. And now he's landed at the University of Colorado with a grad assistant's job. It used to be there was very limited earnings on grad assistants, but it was a great way for a player to start his coaching career and also go to grad school at the same time. So the school could pay for grad school. And a guy like Jay Billis, that's how he paid for law school. He went to Duke Law School and was a grad assistant for Mike Krzyzewski at Duke. He didn't want to coach long term. He wanted to get into broadcasting. He even said that when he was playing. And so this was not to get into broadcasting. It was pay for law school, basically, and do a little coaching, have a little life experience in that as well. And it, used to pay no money. But the NCAA last year lifted the cap on what these limited earnings coaches could make because they were worried about all these antitrust suits that were going on and things related to the NIL and so forth. So Warren Sapp, who's never really coached before, except for showing up in training camp with Washington, he may have done that at a couple of other places. He's on Deion Sanders' staff at Colorado, making $150,000 a year. $150,000 a year, and on top of that, and I don't know if this will be a charade or not, because he most recently had to finish up college. You can't work at a college unless you have a degree. He somehow got his degree, I guess, from Miami, where he played college, and he is required to be enrolled in a graduate-level course. He's 51 years old. Is he going to be sitting at a desk with a bunch of 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds? Maybe, but the university says he is. He's also not allowed to have any off-campus contact with recruits. So what's he going to do? And that's a big job. That's a big part of the job, being an assistant coach in college football. They're calling him the Football Quality Control Senior Analyst, whatever the hell that means. He said he's going to help players work on their stance and stuff like that. You know, maybe Deion can shield him, but I think this is a really dangerous situation for Colorado. I hope it doesn't work this way, but I bet you they're gonna regret this. They're gonna regret this move. And there's already been some domestic violence survivor groups that have protested about it. This is going to be because Deion draws so much attention. He can probably pull this off. You know, he could shield Sapp from anything that's happening. But you know, a guy coming in for $150,000 a year to do what? To show players how to work on their stance and be part of the Deion show, which is very, very popular, but not ultimately successful. Let's not forget they won only 4 games last year. And maybe Shedeur Sanders is going to be the number 1 quarterback that goes in the draft, and the other player, slipped my mind, plays both ways. He may be a top draft pick as well. But come on. I mean, this is not as innocent as it sounds. And $150,000 a year for a guy to help players work on their stance, and I'll be very interested if, in fact, he is going to grad school there and doing the grad school work. You know, I kind of wonder about that, but we'll see. Reminder once again, got Mel Kiper coming up on Tuesday. Really looking forward to talking to Mel at 10 o'clock. Coming up next, Mike Callow sits in for Tony, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.